They say the deep woods of the Navidad River don't just hold shadows, they hold secrets that were never meant to be told. Envision, for a moment, living for 15 years in a world where your only conversation is with the wind and the only eyes watching you are the ones reflecting in the dark. This is a story of isolation, fear, in the wildness that exists just past the edge of the campfire. I'm Zach Hansen, and this is Bobcat Cherry. It is 1837, and you've just raised a cabin in the heart of Lavaca County, Texas, entirely alone in the vast, untamed wilderness. At night, the silence is so thick that it rings in your ears, and then you hear it, the rhythmic thump, thump, thump of someone walking on your porch. You grab a rifle, kick open the door, and see nothing. Only a single ear of corn is missing from the sack that you helped pick yesterday, and a footprint in the mud that looks almost human, but it's twice as long as yours. For the first few years, the settlers thought they were dealing with a leshy, or a wood spirit matter. They called him the short-haired spirit. He was never aggressive. He never harmed a woman or even a child. He was a poltergeist of the pantry. He would enter cabins while people were sleeping, just moving furniture around, and take nothing but really just a meal, possibly a cured ham. Some families started to leave offerings out like they were feeding a god. They leave a bowl of stew or a worn blanket on the stump, and by morning he would be gone, replaced by a strangely carved stick or a pile of river shells. As more people moved to the Navidad, the spirit became a source of, community terror. In a small town, a mystery that lasts 15 years becomes a religion. People began to report that the Wildman had supernatural abilities. They said he could swim underwater for 10 minutes at a time. They said he could speak to the wolves. The most famous story from this era involves a group of hunters who cornered him in a box canyon. They had him dead to rights. They watched him leap up 15 feet of sheer rock wall, something no human could ever do, and vanish into the canopy. It was during this time that the detective aspect of the story begins. A few men noticed that the thefts always kept happening when the moon was thin. He was tracking the lunar cycles. He wasn't a mindless animal. He was actually a tactical genius. There was a man named Reverend Adolphus Lynn that enters the picture. He wasn't just a man, though. He was a man of God, and he was a man of logic. He realized that the spirit always used the same game trails. He didn't use a gun. He used a bear trap, a mechanism designed to catch a limb without crushing it. The night he was caught, the scream he let out didn't seem human. It was described as a wail of 1,000 years. When the search party arrived with lanterns, the allure of the ghost evaporated. It was replaced by the crushing weight of reality. He was a man of incredible physical beauty, muscular, scarred, and completely at home in his own skin. They found his nest nearby. It wasn't even a cave. It was a sophisticated hut woven from willow branches and lined with moss, perfectly camouflaged. Inside, they found 15 years' worth of souvenirs from the town: a broken pocket watch, a silver spoon, and dozens of carved wooden figures that looked like African royalty. The tragedy deepens. When they brought him to the town of Victoria, they treated him like a circus animal. They put him in a cell, and charged people a nickel to see the wild man. But then, a man who spoke a rare dialect from the west coast of Africa was brought in. He sat with the wild man for hours. The story that emerged was that he had been on a slave ship that wrecked or landed near the coast of Galveston. He had seen the horror of the plantations and chose the swamp instead. He chose 15 years of total loneliness over one day of chains. We call him a wild man, but who was truly more civilized? The man who lived in harmony with the river for a decade, or the people who put a king in a cage and charged a nickel to stare at his grief? The wild man died within months of his capture. The medical cause was likely failure to thrive, essentially a broken heart. And he was buried in an unmarked grave. But the locals say the Navidad River didn't let him go. Even today, if you go down to the riverbanks near Sublime, Texas, after a heavy rain, you might see those long, splayed footprints in the fresh mud. The wild man isn't a ghost that wants to hurt you. He's the ghost of Texas freedom. He's the reminder that some spirits are simply too big for the fences we build. The wild man of the Navidad reminds us that sometimes the things that haunt our woods are made of flesh, blood, and a desperate longing for a freedom we can barely imagine. He was a man who became a ghost because the world had no place for him. But as we move west, past the humid bottomlands and into the jagged heat of the Big Bend, the hauntings seem to change. The air gets thinner out there, and the line between what is real and what is spirit starts to shimmer like a desert mirage. If the wild man was a story of a soul trying to hide from humanity, our next story is about a soul who refused to leave it behind, even after the breath left her lungs. We're leaving the dark water of the Navidad for the red dust of a mercury mine. We're trading the silence of the swamp for the blue flicker of a lantern that refuses to go out. Let's head to the ghost town of Terlingua to meet the woman they call the Cinnabar Shadow. Most people think of ghosts as something found in old Victorian mansions or foggy East Texas pine curtains. But in the high desert of the Big Bend, the ghosts don't hide in the fog. They hide in the heat waves. We're going to a place called Terlingua. Today, it's a tourist spot for chili cook-offs. But 100 years ago, it was a mercury mining town, a place of red dust, poison, and desperate men. Cinnabar, also meaning mercury, is a very strange element. It's a liquid metal, but it's beautiful and toxic. It can rot the mind, and in the 1920s, the miners in Terlingua were breathing in those fumes every single day. And that's where Tonya comes in. Tonya Quintana wasn't a miner. She was a traditional healer. She didn't use modern medicine. She used the desert. She used sage, creosote, and prayer. She was the spiritual anchor for a town that was literally being poisoned by the earth. Tonya lived in a small stone hut on the edge of the Chisos Mountains. When a miner was dying of mercury poisoning and what they called the shakes, Tonya was the one who stayed with them. She believed that death wasn't a wall, but more so a river. She would light a small, blue-tinted lantern and guide them through the red mist of their final hours. In 1928, a sudden flu swept through the camp. Tonya worked for 72 hours straight, going from stone hut to stone hut. She never slept. She never ate. She just kept lighting that lantern. On the fourth night, Tonya collapsed. She died in the middle of a prayer for a dying child. But here's where it gets Bobcat Cherry spooky. The miners buried her in the Terlingua cemetery, that famous rocky graveyard where the graves are covered in stones to keep coyotes out. But the very next night, the shakes didn't stop, and neither did Tonya. For nearly a century, people in Terlingua have reported seeing a specific light. It isn't the white of a flashlight or the yellow of a campfire. It's a soft, pulsing blue. It moves between the ruins of the old miner huts. And you could think that it's some atmospheric trick. And maybe it was. But listen to the stories from the locals. In the 1970s, a hiker got lost in the Chisos. As the sun went down, temperature dropped to freezing. He was huddled in a rock crevice, certain he wouldn't make it out alive. He claims a woman in a long, tattered shawl appeared. She didn't speak to him. She just held a blue lantern and walked. He followed her for 2 miles through the dark until he walked right into the middle of a search party's camp. When he turned to thank her, she was completely gone. No footprints in the sand. Nothing. There's a spiritual theory about Tonya. They say because she died in the middle of a healing, her soul is unfinished. She's trapped in this loop of mercy. But there's an allure to it. People go to Terlingua today and try to leave small jars of water or even bunches of dried sage on a very specific unmarked stone grave. They're not asking for a haunting. They're asking for a blessing. To people that know the lore of the story, it's about the idea that someone is still watching over the most desolate place in Texas. And be warned, the locals say if you see the blue light, don't chase it. If you're healthy, she has no business with you. She only appears to those whose river is starting to rise. Next time you're out on the Big Bend and the sun goes down beyond the Santa Elena Canyon, look toward the ruins of the Mercury mines. If you see a flicker of blue, don't be afraid. It's just Tonya, checking the wards, making sure the desert doesn't take anyone who isn't ready to go. I'm Zach Hansen, and this is Bobcat Cherry. Some secrets stay buried in the red dust. Some just keep walking.